Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Norway Chess 2022, this epic tournament being held in Stavanger with many top players, including the world champion himself, Magnus Carlsen. Now, yesterday the players had a rest day. They didn't play. They played today. Yesterday they did what any normal person would do in Stavanger, Norway on a rest day. They went to play on a giant-sized chessboard in the square. They probably signed some autographs and everything in between. But today, they came right back to the chessboard, and one of the most epic clashes was upon us with Magnus Anand of India playing against Magnus. So obviously, they played 2 world championships against each other. They have played countless of games against each other, but they're also in their best form. They're both tied for first. So you know this is going to be an amazing match. And it's not anything that you expect. This recap is going to be like just so much fun. A lot of plot twists, a lot of twists and turns. And the last game of this recap is just as good as the first one. So hopefully you enjoy. I know I've been reading your comments. Why is Magnus on every thumbnail and every title? Look, I explained in a recent video why I use Magnus and specifically why I use kind of more clickbaity stuff. If you didn't watch that video, that's your loss. You won't understand. But if you want me to name these videos Norway Chess Recap 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, that's also not going to work. So unfortunately, you are going to have to put aside your hatred for Norwegians and allow me to show you Magnus up close and personal. That could have been phrased better. Magnus Anand begins the game with e4, e5, and we have an Italian. All right, an Indian and a Norwegian travel to Italy. Knight f6, d3, bishop e7, both sides castle, and we have rook e1. Now, back in the day, players would go bishop c4, bishop c5, and then play c3 and d4. Now they just sort of do whatever they want. Like occasionally they just play a4. Like they just push the pawn to a4. Black can move the h-pawn. Black can move the a-pawn as well. Magnus attacks the bishop. And Vishy's like, I'm not going to give it to you. And also, I would like to play b4 in the future. Magnus is like, I'm going to play c5. You cannot play b4 in the future. Vishy plays c3 so that he's like, I can play b4 in the future. The knight goes back to c6, so you can't play b4 right now. But maybe you'll still be able to play it in the future. You'll notice that this bishop is extremely passive. That's it. That's all you had to notice. Knight a3. So Vishy completes the quest of having all 4 pieces on the a file in his territory. The knight is headed to these 2 squares. No, it's not headed to that square. It's really headed to these 2 squares. And then maybe to e3, where it controls the holes in the black position. I don't know why I said knight b5. I think it's because I woke up about 25 minutes ago. You ever take an afternoon nap that, like, you forgot what your name was? Yeah, that's what happened to me today. h6, and we see the knight kind of rotating, and Vishy puts the knight on d5. So, obviously, if Magnus takes the knight, he hangs a fork. If he takes the knight with the bishop, he just hangs the fact that his knight is kind of goofy, and it could get trapped. It's not going to get trapped, but that could happen. So yeah, I mean, you can say that white has a ever so slightly better position. Now, someone here who has watched like one of my YouTube videos will probably hear something like, oh, the bishop pair is good, and then go get the bishop. But that's really not a good idea, because that knight is extremely strong, and the bishop that black has is actually black's worst piece. Of the bishops and the knights and the rooks and the queen that black has, that bishop is by far the worst piece. It's just kind of a liability in the black position. So you really don't want to take it. You could take on f6, but then that's just trading equal pieces, so there's no point doing that either. Vishy plays knight d2. That is the best move. He is headed this way. His queen could also support the center, right? Queen to f3. And the knight could be headed to the queen side, but also, you know, there is this wraparound option as well. So, b5, knight f1, and now Magnus is like, you know what? I think I played a little bit too close to the sun here, because this knight is going to go here, and then I'm in some trouble, you know, because in the long run, if Vishy can take and then put his other knight on d5, that might also be annoying. But more than anything else, this just kind of sucks for black. Like, having this bind in the position. Like, Vishy doesn't have to do anything. So, bishop d5. Bishop takes d5. Vishy gives up his light-scored bishop, and the idea is to deflect the knight to the edge of the board, so that a long time ago, remember I told you about the move b4, this can happen, and Magnus is just being pushed around, right? He is slightly worse. This pawn is a nightmare to deal with. That knight can't move, the bishop can't move, nobody could really move. Now, breaking through the position is going to be a different story, so Magnus takes on b4 and plays a5, and he's like, all right, Vishy, let's trade some pawns. If you take on a5, you know, I take with the rook or the queen, and I pressure you here, we're just going to end up trading some pawns, and we're going to go home. Well, actually, no, we're going to come back and play an Armageddon. And Vichy is like, not so fast. Not so fast. I'm going to get the pawn back on b4. Now, if you look at this position, nobody can guard this pawn. See, Levy, yes, I can. Queen a5. Yeah, you're not wrong, but then there's rook b2. And you can't take because my rooks will x-ray that. That knight is a garbage piece, right? So the computer after rook b1 wants black to play immediately knight c5, so that after rook b4, you suddenly arrive with the rook on enemy shores, and white struggles to move here. Like, for example, if queen c2, there's rook c1, queen c1, and then knight takes d3. Okay? So, queen d7 played by Magnus, and I don't exactly know what was missed, but he doesn't get his rook at all to the back rank of white now. I guess he missed the rook eb2 idea. I don't know what he missed. He's just a clean pawn down. And this is around the time I went to take a nap. I was like, wow, I'm going to wake up and the game's just over. That's crazy. So let's watch Anand put this away. I mean, he is completely winning. It's just, he's got not just a pawn, he's got a passed b pawn, right? So what is Magnus going to do? Well, Magnus starts pressing the gas. You see, Magnus is a guy who's like, I sense danger. Time to step on the gas. Yeah, not on the road, but on a chessboard. Vichy gives him the d3 pawn. It was going to be very difficult to defend it. Now he kicks out the queen, and the queen is back on h7. Vichy is just totally winning. All right, rook b3, kicks the knight backwards, and he just takes it. Okay, still leaving this bishop there. There are now two pass pawns in the white position. They're both passers. All white has to do is coordinate the pieces, push the pawns to a point where black is completely reduced to being passive, and win the game. We have b6, the rook goes passive, b7, the rook goes passive, and Vichy can play queen g4, disallow the queen to get back into the game, knight f5 is coming, and he can even sag this pawn if he really wants. Knight f5, bishop f6, rook b6. I mean, the threats, there's just a million threats, and just pressure, pressure, pressure. Knight e3 with the idea of queen c8 in the future is pretty crazy. You got to be a little bit careful, though, because Magnus has one trick up his sleeve. And it's the c-pawn. And Vichy stops the c-pawn, but the c-pawn has something sinister in mind. And it's not what you think. It's queen d3. In the middle of all of this, the horrible nature of the black pieces, queen d3 suddenly asks a few question marks of white. Here's the thing. What do you do? Because if you take and play rook b5 defending the pawn sneaks past everybody. You're forced to come back, and now rook takes b7, first of all, right? And now the white rook can't defend. Now, if you take the queen and go here, well, black just goes back, threatening the pawn. If you try to defend both pawns, rook d7, who guards this? Right? Rook b6, I don't know, g6, f5, e4. Like, the avalanche of pawns can come, and suddenly the game turns around completely. And Vichy is losing his biggest asset, which is the b7 pawn. It took Magnus one move and pressuring Vichy on the clock, and he manages to salvage the draw. Vichy offers a draw here. The players agree. Rook f8, king h6. This pawn is lost after king g7. And that's it. We just go. The game ends before it even starts. Wow. That is nuts. I mean, Vichy was doing so well. It was like vintage Vichy. I mean, vintage Vichy. VV. All right? VV. It was there. It was there for the taking. So now he's got to put Magnus away in the Armageddon, right? We know that white has been an overwhelming favorite in the Armageddon. We have a relatively different, it takes only 4 moves to change things from the last game. But now the bishop goes back to e7. So it's on the same square it was, but at least there's a target there, right? d6. And this time Vichy gets the pawn a little bit further on the queen side. And Magnus already trades bishop for knight and just begins, wailing at the white position. Again, the strategy in the Armageddon, because you're down 3 minutes, is you really need to force white to think. Otherwise, it doesn't quite work. You're just down a lot on time, and white is a huge favorite. So he's doing a nice job here. I mean, this is a very imbalanced position. He's trying to play d5. He's really trying to force the issue. Vichy takes. And I would say that Magnus has done quite a decent job from this opening. Position is very nice. He's already equalized. He's now got 20 moves to make. And then he's just going to be doing quite well. So the center gets locked, okay? Queen e3, knight d3. Look at this. Magnus dancing. The horse in the position. f3. Watch this move by black. Knight! Oh my... f2. You can't take it because of the fork. The knight is on f2, and now it gallops out of the position. This is incredible. I mean, black's just much better. I mean, you can't make this stuff up, but black is playing against the clock, right? So we have rook f3, rook f1, knight h5, and now the initiative for white begins. g4, and the momentum of the game begins shifting. All right, black does not have a lot of time. He has a great position, but what does he do? Starts playing knight g5. All right, knight e4. Vishy doesn't repeat moves because he's playing for a win. He's like, are you insane? This is completely... Now g5. Again, the player with black trying to make that 40th move. 32 moves have been played. Knight back to h3. At some point, this bishop is going to get involved. Right now, it's not doing a great job of getting involved, but it will. I promise. All right, knight takes g5. Maybe it's not even going to be necessary, but here we go. Kaboom! And the black defenses absolutely collapse. The black knight here cannot hit both squares at the same time, so knight g5, rook g5, time is ticking, and Vishy escapes up 2 pawns. He actually, I think, makes an inaccuracy here. I think bishop f3, I mean, time is low. Queen g3 is the best move, trading queens, but it doesn't matter. It's Armageddon. They have no time. Bishop f3, queen f4, Magnus still active. Takes. All right, Vishy is now only up 1 pawn, but black's king is very weak. Oh my god, king f2, that's absolutely nuts. Rook h3, rook h1 here would have threatened mate on the back rank. I mean, I don't know what would have happened there. Rook h3, g5, and Vishy's just about to break through. Takes on g6, we have check here, and now just the trade. Just a very simple exchange. Both pawns fall, and Vishy Anand beats Magnus Carlsen with a fork on the 50th move of the game. And he wins. Now, Vishy, after this game, said this actually felt like a defeat because he wanted to win that in classical. Can you imagine? Oh my goodness. Awesome stuff. What a battle. Battling like it's 10 years ago in the World Championship match. I mean, Vishy is just unbelievable. Just unbelievable. Unreal. Now, a couple of other matches that were decided in the classical portion. Ari and Tari taking the fight to Wang Hao. Here we have an early h6. Right, so we just saw in the game between Magnus and Vishy, bishop c5, this variation. Here we have h6 and a very quick g5. I think Wang Hao is on full-on tilt mode because he lost to, Mamedjarov a couple of days ago. My man's just like, you know what? To hell with this. Let's have some fun. I mean, normally you play g5 and white has castled. This is a pretty good sign that I don't need to castle. You know what I mean? Like, why would I castle into the attack? So instead of that, Tari's like, all right, let me go create a few threats. I'm gonna take some space on that side. I don't really know what you're doing over there. I got my horses kind of rotated toward the middle. Knight back to f1. Inviting a repetition of moves, by the way, right? Look at this, knight e3, knight g4, knight f1. Wang Hao is just, I mean, this is insane. I mean, he's playing so aggressively. You never see e4, e5 positions looking like this. This is what is happening, by the way? Black is like winning on move 14, okay? There's an ant on the wall. I don't know why you had to know that. Now you know. I promise we clean the house. It's summer in New York. We got like 48 species of bugs just on the block, all right? Takes, knight h4. The only piece Tari has playing is a horse. The entire other set of pieces is on the first rank. If you take the horse, then queen takes g4. If you don't take the horse, then the horse will try to get to f5. Your only other option is to go back and cover that. But then I will go here and I will take your bishop. So it's actually kind of funny. So here, and on move 19, black castles. On move 24, after opening the entire position, white castles. This game violates everything that I know about chess. Everything. What? This is one of the most insane moves I've ever seen. This was a threat when it was check, but the knight is hanging. If you take the knight and allow this, you just lose. So the queen comes in and you just get blasted. But by doing this, now you're able to defend, and now we have a moment of stability, but of course black is better. Of course, because what the heck is white doing? I mean, what is white doing? White bought a house with no, like, wall. Just no wall. Yeah, you're gonna build that wall? Nah, maybe not. Put on some tarp. What about in the rain? It doesn't rain that much. Okay. Fine, you know better than me. So now Wang Hao has to win, right? So he's playing c5, but the thing is in position sometimes to win, you have to take risk. Like the board has to open. You have to do something. You can't just look at Stockfish in the middle of the game. You can't do that anyway, but it says -1. You're like, all right, but how? Okay, suddenly Wang Hao just gave up the H-pawn, right? He just gives up the pawn. Now he starts to take and open up the position. All right, he brings in his knight, but now knight f5. So now Tari forces a trade. And so Tari's not even, like, he's not worse anymore. And now, on top of that, there's this momentum shift in the game. So Wang Hao's like, what the hell? I was just better. All of a sudden, whoa, now Tari's attacking. What? Whoa. Tari was not the guy that was playing this position for a win. And suddenly he is. D3 check, by the way. Queen takes E5. Counter check. So look at that. I mean, Tari's better. Wang Hao sacrifices a bishop. And what? It doesn't work? It just doesn't work at all. Queen C2 check, just King A3. There's no more checks. Queen D2, Queen B7. And Wang Hao wins. Rook C7 played, and Wang Hao just resigns because check here and Bishop 2 E3. And that's just the end of the game. So, several moves ago, before all this happened, Black was about -1, and C5 was the best move. After Knight F3, Queen D7 was the best move, and I think he had to just play Queen D3. He just had to be a little bit more aggressive. And White really struggles to move. Like in the game, he played Rook C1. You can't play Rook C1 because this hangs. Queen D3, and I mean, if Queen G6 had been played, for example, attacking stuff, Knight goes back to C7, Rook D8, and then you just kind of be, I don't know, but just a complete turnaround from Tari, winning a very, very wild game. I mean, castling on move 19 and 24, pushing all your pawns. Yeah, must have felt like a crazy game to win. Let's put it this way. And a big win. I mean, that might be Tari's best win ever. Maybe second best win ever. I think he beat Nepo in the last Norway Chess. Anish Giri versus Timur Rajabov. This one, a Rui Lopez, so a trip to Spain, but suddenly the plane turns around and wants to go to Berlin. Anish says, no, thank you. I prefer to go to Spain. This is an anti-Berlin. Bishop C5. And here, Rajabov plays, so C3 covers knight D4 and also prepares D4. As far as I am aware, Black usually castles here. And castling prevents the move D4 because the king stays in the center. And so after takes, check, you just win this. But the move D6 does not prevent the move D4 at all. Like at all. And so when I saw this, I was very perplexed. Now, D6 might be the second most popular move in the position, most likely, but White scores about 60%. D6 is almost never played. In fact, if I look at the database, the highest rated player to play it was Hikaru in a blitz game about 7 years ago. Caruana in a rapid game against someone like 500 points lower than him, and like 5 other 2700s over the last like 20 years. Like, this move does not get played. There are 2 moves that get played in this position. They are castles and D5. So Rajabov must know something we don't, right? So he just gives Giri the center. Just big boy center for Giri. And now Anish has to prove why this position is plus 0.7. Okay, so what does he do? He plays H3. That move restricts the light-scored bishop of Black. Will he trade bishops? Nope. Your pieces are a problem now. Now, White has 2 plans in this position. Number 1, advance in the middle. Number 2, advance on the queen side. There is a third wildcard plan. Maybe you advance on the king side, but you either advance in the middle or on the queen side. That's where you have your space. Okay, so there's Anish doing some stuff on the queen side. There we go. All right, now he advances in the middle. Why is he able to do this? Because his position is perfect. He was just sort of given... He was dealt a good hand in the opening, you know? He started this game with, like, pocket queens, you know? Not too bad of a hand. Pocket jacks is a confusing hand, according to Daniel Negreanu. Pocket queens, not so bad, right? Rook C1. He, like, started this game with pocket queens, and he knows, like, one of his opponent's cards. And it's an undercard, all right? So, what does he got? So, you know, he's looking for a flush, you know, maybe 8-9 suited. I don't know. But, well, there's the queenside expansion. All right, it's everything that I promised. All right, stability. All right, now controlling the middle, advancing in the middle, Now he kicks the bishop out on that side of the board, trades the bishop. Now he trades the bishop because if you take a look at this position, do a quality control, this is Anish's worst piece as it turns out. So he just gets rid of Rajabov's best piece. And I mean, he's winning the battle on all three sides. He has a space advantage in the middle. He controls the 3 pawns on the queen side. 3 of black's pieces are on the back rank. Knight f5, queen g4 is a mate potentially. f4, f5, e6 is a mate. Like, when you win the battle on all 3 sides, and black cannot make a single pawn break or outmaneuver you in any way or create any imbalance like bishop for knight or exchange sacrifice, you're just gonna win. So Anish targets c6, puts the queen on e4 check, knight back. He doesn't even have to okay, and he just wins c6. Now he's a pawn up. Okay. Now here Rajabov finally gets a bit of counterplay, right? Okay, he sacked a pawn. Maybe he's got some counterplay. Anish is like, bro, let's trade rooks. Rajabov doesn't really have much of a choice, right? I mean, Anish making this game look simple, right? Rook c3, queen takes d4, 1 tactical attempt. If you take, check here, black suddenly is like maybe okay. No. Anish wins via knight f7 check. Black has to go here. This is check. Rajabov resigns. Anish played that game like he was Stockfish. That game was played as if black was playing as a human being and was like, I'm going to give Stockfish a slight advantage. Yeah, I don't believe that Stockfish is actually that much better. And Anish was like, let me show you why. From this position, he just showed why 2 pawns defeat 1 with a slight spatial disadvantage. He restricted the movement of black's light squared bishop, did not make trades, and just slowly attacked every weakness, made a pawn break to take some center space, rotated his pieces back toward the middle, traded off black's only good piece, and just dominated all 3 sides of the board. This game he made look so simple. He made it look so easy. You look at a game like this, you're like, I mean, that's amazing. Wow, I should play like that. And then you like go hang your queen like 4 times in the first 10 moves. Me too. I hang my queen twice in the first 10 moves. So Anish back on the leaderboard. And now time for our Armageddon games. So first game I have for you, Maxim Vachier-Lagrave versus Vesselin Topalov. Another e4, e5. Has every game today been e4, e5? e4, e5, e4, e5, e4, e5, e4, e5, e4, e5. Okay, wow. Aru Lopez, this one is an invitation to go to the endgame, the Berlin endgame, and MVL does like this variation. Here we actually see, though, the Rio. I think this is like the Rio variation. And yeah, this is one of the most balanced openings in existence. But I guess MVL is like, well, I have more time. B3 is an edgy line. B3, bishop A3, whatever. I've never seen this before. I don't think white has any advantage here whatsoever, but it's the Berlin. White's advantage is gone if you go into it. But MVL's like, I'm not so convinced, all right? Let's try to improve our position. As I've said in the Armageddon, if black just runs out of time, black will lose. Because black's going to get antsy, try to do something, and it's going to be too late. This is one of the worst situations for black to be in because you are down 3 minutes in an otherwise symmetrical position. If white does even anything remotely challenging to you, like Vichy did to Carlsen in the Armageddon, you simply run out of time. Like I said, you simply run out of time, or it just becomes pandemonium. All right, it just simply becomes pandemonium. You know, even having 50 seconds to 2 is a massive difference, right? Which frequently happens. So we have a bunch of exchanges, but MVL just wins a pawn. MVL uses the H-file attack, that's just the same side, H4, H5, little infiltration, and just takes, and he just wins a pawn. Takes. If FG, rook e6, so now MVL is just a clean pawn up. Let's watch how he does this, all right? The same way, let's watch how Giri won his game. Watch what MVL does. Removes one of the rooks. If you want to win an endgame, especially with rooks on, you should trade one of the rooks. Not both, but at least one. King g3, knight f4. So now we're looking for either knight versus bishop endgame. We're going to trade. Or we're going to use the knight to attack the king with knight h5. All right, bringing the rook to the middle. Excellent pawn break to split the black pawns. All right, now we play c5. Now we're looking to get in a little bit further on that side of the board. B file is open for a rook to transfer to the left, and the c6 pawn for black is weak. Rook e5, beautiful move, defending the pawn, restricting the black knight. And now rook h5, and we go in, and we go back to attack the pawn, and now we go bishop c4. All of our pieces are active. Knight, bishop, rook. Feels like black is a step behind us. We pick up on f6. Now white has 2 connected pass pawns, and the game is over. And the game will be decided by those pawns. One of them will move, and it will move very quickly. And Topalov resigns after the move g6 because he either sacrifices all his pieces for it, or white makes a queen. MVL making the Berlin with white looks super simple. Just effortless. But if you had the patience to make it 25 minutes in this video, and you forgive me for putting Magnus's name on everything, the game that you are about to see is incredible. Mamedyarov versus Wesley So drew their rapid game. No, they didn't. That was not the result of this game. I did not spoil it. They drew their classical game. And this game was a weird English ready Fianchetto fusion, and it got wild, okay? So it got wild real quick. Bishop g4, bishop b5, Mamedyarov is not castling. He has decided that his king is safer in the middle of the board. Knight e5 played by Wesley, and bishop back to e2. Now, you might look at this position and go, what the heck? Isn't d3 a fork? Yes, it is. But then queen c3. And if you take the bishop, then I take your knight, and somehow my king survives. But more on that later, okay? Rook c8. Rook g1. Oh, yes. Oh, yes. This is the good stuff. When Mamedyarov is given the keys to the car, you bet you're driving in the fast lane on the highway. All right? But he also has a radar detector. He's a smart, fast driver. All right? He can, like, scan the beeps. Scan, if there's a cop standing in the corner somewhere. Radar detectors, is that a thing anywhere else? Like in the States, I think it's a thing, but it's also not legal in every state. I know it's like legal in some states to track if police are using the speed thing. Anyway, that's an aside. Rook e8, knight g3, and f4. And I mean, Mamedyarov is just unconcerned. This fork has been here like the whole game, by the way. And finally it's here. And the bishop has been taken. And the knight has been taken. White's king is just stuck directly in the center, and Mamedyarov is not even taking the pawn on e2. He's just not taking it. Now, visually, this looks incredible for black. Knight f5, knight h5, for white. Knight f5, knight h5, queen g4, e6 to open this up, f4 to defend everything. But black is right there with the move, with the move c4. c4, with the idea to go knight c5. Now, white can play b4 here. That looks real nice and good, but the knight e5 would have been beautiful. Bishop e5, f6, and Wesley would have been fighting back. But Wesley has 7 minutes. And by this point, he probably has about 4, 3. So he's only interested in solidity. And he finds c4, but now the e5 pawn is well defended, so b4 is really good. a5, bishop c3. Finally, Mamedyarov takes the pawn. Knight d5. You cannot take my bishop. Takes. c3, trying to rip apart the king's defenses. f5, trying to rip apart the king's defenses. C takes d2. e6. Both of black's pawns are about to collapse, and you know that black is much lower on time than white. He doesn't have the clock situation. Like, that's the problem. All right? But he's getting close. He's getting close. White feels the pressure as well. He has to think about the position. All right? We have rook c7. Knight h5, and here, in the face of the incoming assault on his king, Mamedyarov opens the window, picks up a cloth to tie him to himself as a parachute, and jumps out. King to f3. Come and take my pawn, Wesley. Come and take my pawn, Wesley. There's no more checks. Rook h1, and now I Uno reverse you with my rooks. Oh my. Oh my, this looks terrifying. The bishop, the knight, the rooks, both pawns, and even the queen are involved in the attack. Mamedyarov has found a way to get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 pieces involved in an attack. This is absolutely nuts. Bishop h6, bishop e5 hitting the queen. The queen has to go, and now I just calmly take your rook. Now, I think in this position, f takes e6, and the position was still in the balance, which is beyond hilarious. If black finds the move h6, disallowing the opening of the g file. g7 to go to take, rook f7 check. Huh? If the king runs to e2, queen a6, and it's actually black who is winning. That doesn't happen. Instead of that, Mamedyarov finds a way to cash out. Wesley does his best, but the tactics are flying all over the board. Knight f6 check is not the blunder of a piece. There would have been a queen trade, and the h6 bishop would have fallen. And Mamedyarov picks up a swashbuckling victory by obliterating black's king in the center of the board. And after 5 rounds of action in Norway chess, Magnus Anand is in first place with 10 points. Magnus with 9.5. Wesley So and Mamedyarov remain in 3rd and 4th. Actually, they are tied now because Mamedyarov was able to get a win. And yeah, just absolutely unbelievable stuff. What a round. Thanks for hanging out with me. Thanks for tolerating what's on the thumbnail and in the titles. I'll see you in the next recap. Peace. Get out of here.